That's one of the things I feel like doing what areas of law that we do. You know, you look at people, I listen to some podcasts, and I heard one with Elon Musk, for instance. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he's really throwing out everything about what we think about space, science, just all of it, and saying, let's reinvent it. He's sending rockets to space that are being reused, and he's building tunnels through LA and all this stuff. Yeah. And I think about it in the sense of what our practice areas, and that's something that does bother me a little bit, is to say, you know, is there an opportunity, whether it be in real estate law, business law, to make a profound impact? Can we disrupt the system and change it? Yeah. And, you know, eventually there may be. Right now, I don't necessarily know what that is. But I feel like, you know, in certain areas of law, whether it be criminal justice, you can make a big impact, and you can, you know, go to the Supreme Court and change a law. But I would be interested to see in our practice areas, business law probably more so than anything else, is how can we throw out the system, the social construct of it, and invent something better.
You're listening to the Guys Who Do Stuff podcast. Get unstuck, tell a better story, and have a good answer to the question, what are you doing today? Do this stuff.
We have today our first duo, Morgan Perry Law, David Morgan and Nolan Perry. Mm-hmm. So say hello, guys. Tell us a little bit about, like, where is this Morgan Perry Law?
Yeah, it's in my hometown of Fuquay, which is where I grew up, where I felt like we had some community there. And this is really a long story, but I'll shorten it. We kind of started scheming in law school. We wanted to do our own thing. And there was some debate, but we ended up in Fuquay and really never looked back. It's been great. The growth in Fuquay has been awesome, and I love what I do every day.
What's your guys' growth rate compared to other places? It seems like everything's going south and east in your way.
Yeah, I think it's one of the fastest growing communities, which is good for us in the sense that we really wanted to be small town attorneys, but then we're also in a growing community where, you know, there's a downtown community. It feels small town, but you've got the benefit of Raleigh and Holly Springs, Apex.
What's the funniest way you've heard somebody mispronounce Fuquay?
Oh, I can't say. you got a censor button on there?
No. This show does carry an explicit rating. So.
Yeah, so you're good, motherfucker.
I'll just let everybody use their imagination. Submit your best way to pronounce Fuquay Varina.
How long have you guys been in operation?
So we opened officially November 2016. But really, I guess the beginning of 2017 was when we really hit the ground running. There was about 2 months of really getting set up. So we're coming up on 3 years here in a few months.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So what is, my first question, my first thing I want to talk to you guys about is like about partnership, because you guys are partners in a law firm. I'm a sole proprietor. We have a lot of people that listen to the podcast that are small business owners, entrepreneurs. What's the best part and worst part about being in a partnership?
I'll let you go ahead, David.
That's a tough question. I feel like I've said this before. Maybe I have the best thing about my business and the worst thing is being a partnership.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine doing this on my own. Mm-hmm. I just really can't. So that has been awesome. But then it's like, and I feel like Nolan has this exact same feeling. Oh, I have this awesome idea. And he brings it to me. And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, oh my God, this idiot isn't going to do my idea. And I'm sure I have the same feelings too. So it's like,
yeah, without somebody to bounce that off of. Like, all of our ideas are great in the middle of the night. And then we wake up and we're like, check this out. Wait, no, I'm not saying it right.
So I think in the long run, we both balance each other out, and it steered us in a good direction that I don't know that either one of us would have gone down that exact same journey, exact same path if it was just the one of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, we approach our business differently. There's certain times when David may kind of just say, hey, we're just going to go with this. And I may approach it more in the sense of, hey, we got to make out a plan. We got to write this down. Yeah. And you need a little bit of both. And I think that really helps us. But just having that other person to share the experience with is really good too. Yeah. I wouldn't want to be doing this on my own. I don't think I'd still be doing it if it was just me talking to myself through these ideas. I really need somebody to bounce ideas off of.
Yeah.
And I think too, the fact that you know, Dave and I are really good friends, but we also have our groups of friends outside of work too, where, you know, Josh is a mutual friend of ours, but, you know, we're not necessarily seeing each other 24/7.
Yeah.
And that's really helpful. I feel like you can get tired of somebody real quick.
Yeah. And Nolan is more of a detail oriented thinker, and I'm not. I'm more of a big picture. I mean, obviously we both have some of both, but that's my main drive is big picture concepts. So in that way, it's perfect that we kind of balance each other out. Because
did you guys do that on purpose? A lot of business books will say you need that in a business, whatever name you use for it. Well, you need the big picture, you need the detail, or whether they call it visionary and implementer, which is a popular terminology that people use.
Yeah, we didn't necessarily join because of that, but I think it was really good that, you know, that just happened to be the case.
I just imagine like you guys at 16 running into each other like, you seem like the visionary. I'll be your implementer. That probably didn't happen.
That's totally how it went.
Yeah.
You know, the craziest thing I think about our firm, and I think David knows the story too, is, you know, I throughout law school, I knew I wanted to start my own firm. I wanted to start my own business. Wasn't sure if it was going to be by myself or with a partner. And at a certain point I was taking interviews, and I was out, you know, I was in Asheville, North Carolina doing an interview, and decided after that interview, I was like, why am I doing this? I still want to do my own thing. I want to stick with my plan. So I actually called David from the bar of the hotel and sitting at a bar, just planned out our firm.
You'd be surprised how many of our guests' ideas started in that very look. That story has come up as a repeating pattern.
At least 80%.
Durbin has a great muse there.
I was just listening to the interview you did with Joe Motz.
Yeah.
And your comment was, did you come up with this idea right after the idea to start a bar? And Joe's response was, no, he actually already owned the bar we were in, so we had to skip that one.
Yeah, I definitely got owned right there, and it was delightful.
That was perfect.
Do you like my funny joke? Oh, no, it's his bar? That's awesome. I don't know why.
That's got to go on the highlight reel, Joe.
Yeah, man. I liked the interview. He's fantastic. So do you guys ever find though, because there's like, I was talking to another business owner, and there's like the non-glorious side of being an owner operator and business person that nobody talks about. And he was relaying a story that was just a very comical rendition and saying like, nobody sees the side where this guy canceled and you're up at 3 a.m. and you don't have time to eat. So you're at the Jersey Turnpike eating from a Taco Bell, falling asleep in your car. I have to imagine it's nice to be able to gripe to each other and have somebody with an empathetic ear. But does that often ever like backfire and be like, hey, only one of us can be freaking out at a time? Like, how do you guys kind of find that balance?
I think because we deal with different cases, we're not freaking out necessarily at the same time. David's practice area is distinct from mine. He'll help me with mine. I'll help him with his. Right. But our freakouts are a little distinct. We definitely have freakouts. I think one of the most unglorious parts of being a business owner was when we decided, do we grow? Do we add staff?
Yeah.
Because we talked about that for
I saw you guys have a full-time position open on your website right now. So you decided to grow.
Yeah, so we hired a paralegal. We're hiring an office administrator. And it was one of those things as a leap of faith to say like, hey, is this going to be beneficial if we do hire this person? Is it going to just cost us money, or is it going to make us money? And I think David saw in my practice area, I was spending 12 plus hours in an office every day. And it was like, something's got to give at some point. And so that was one of the biggest unglorious sides of it, is pulling out the financial statement. What can we do?
Right. So what's your guys' focus? Like, what's your focus when you're doing cases, and what?
Yeah.
So, people can't see that I'm pointing.
Is that a pointing or a claw?
It's like, that's how I point.
So
wrong.
I would say we're a little bit untraditional in that almost nothing we do is in the courtroom. So I focus entirely on business planning and estate planning. So that's really like contractually based. I'm drawing up documents. I'm negotiating agreements, but not in the courtroom. And Nolan is the same, but I'll let him talk about that.
So my practice is primarily real estate, residential, and commercial. But I sit in my office, meet with people in my office. We'll travel for that. Occasionally we have to go to a courthouse, but it's never in the courtroom. We're going to like a registered deeds office.
Yeah. Okay. The correct answer was I'm a little bit country. I'm a little bit rock and roll, but we'll get it next time.
That's right. Next podcast.
That's cool. I'm glad. So David, I have a question for you. I just got to go on a cool trip with my wife. It was our big anniversary, and we got to go to London, and we were on one of those double-decker bus tours. And they mentioned that in London right now, the gig economy, or people that, employ themselves, 1099 contract workers, now makes up 10% of London's workforce. And they mentioned a number that I've forgotten, and I don't want to misquote, of what they think it's going to be in a couple of years. And so working with business owners and structuring them, like I got a couple of questions. One, are 1099 contract workers in the gig economy business owners?
So this is not legal advice.
Disclaimer. We got a full legal disclaimer.
And I'm going to give the classic attorney answer in that it depends.
We won't be able to understand.
No, it depends. I would say more likely than not, I would say no. But it depends on the details.
Yeah.
That's how I feel, because you're not building the systems. So like I drove for Uber when I was in law school.
Right.
I did not consider myself a business owner because they provided the technology. They were marketing it. People were finding me because of their branding. Nobody knew who David Morgan was. They just wanted an Uber. Right. And so I'm just that cog in the system. So I wouldn't have considered myself a business owner. I don't know if that's helpful.
Are there benefits to, like, very specifically, what are the benefits of being a LLC? What do you get from doing that and going through that process?
Yeah. So absolutely. I answer this probably every day. There's two main benefits. When we're talking big picture, there's a lot of small, I would call nuances that you can benefit from. But big picture, it's two things. One is you're transferring your personal liability to corporate liability. So right now, the worst case scenarios we can imagine is, let's say I trip and fall and poke my eye out, right? Yeah. And I sue you tomorrow. Well, it's unlikely, but I could possibly ultimately get to your personal assets, like liens on your home, bad stuff like that. If this is an LLC, then if I win $1 billion judgment, the only thing I can ever obtain is what the LLC owns, which may be simply equipment. That's a lot better scenario than before, where your personal credit is ruined. There's lien against your home, maybe terrible things like that will follow you forever. Versus I'll file for bankruptcy and start a new company. Yeah. And then the other one is you get tax advantages.
Right. That was going to be my question, and I figured you were going to say it. So what are the specific tax advantages of being an LLC? Well, is there a point? Is there like you have to make a certain amount of money to take advantage of these benefits?
So my official answer would be
just say you're talking to me, not giving legal advice.
Right. Yeah, okay. You need to talk to a CPA. And that's what I tell my clients. You need to be working with a CPA. I do find it's hard to say specifics other than I find if you're an LLC taxed as an S corporation. So most people think S corporation is an entirely different entity. And for legal reasons, it's really not. You're a LLC taxed as an S corp, or a C corporation taxed as an S corp, but no one's going to say that whole thing. They just say S corp. If your income is in the ballpark of $70,000 per year, you can get huge benefits from being taxed as an S corp. Anything more than that, I think, depends on the rest of your financial landscape. So it may be true for you, but not true for someone else.
Gotcha. Do you find it rewarding to work with business owners? Like, that's gotta feel good.
I absolutely love it. That is the reason why I got into this business.
Yeah.
Whether it's people come to me and they don't know, they say, I've never been a business owner of any sort. I don't know what I'm doing, all the way to I've been successful up till now. We need to take on an investor. I need to hire a person. Or maybe I'm at the end of my road. It's been a great run. I want to sell my business. And I really enjoy helping people at all of those, even though they're very different processes, because it helps them be successful and achieve their goals. And I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, it's part of the reason why I wanted to be a legal entrepreneur, because I had already started the nonprofit, which I've talked about a little bit on this podcast before. And it just started this entrepreneurial spark that's still there.
Yeah, if you're new to the show and you haven't heard, David has his own episode. I think it's 2 or 3 or 1, or maybe it's 1. It could be 1.
It's early on.
I don't think it's 1. It's not 1.
It's the top 3.
It's early on.
You're the top 3.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, and you should go check that. Listen to that. So when it comes to things around real estate law, what are some of the fun things that you run into when it comes to? Is there anything that you come across your desk and you're like, oh man, this again?
Every day. I think a lot of it just stems towards real estate law has changed a lot in the past since 2008, when we had the financial crisis. So we're running into a lot of people today that are buying homes either for the first time or the last time they bought a home was pre-2008. And they're used to being a very quick, easy process. You're signing one or two documents and you own a home. And it's not like that anymore. There's a process. And I think what most people don't understand is, we're looking at a 30, 45, 60-day process sometimes with closing on a house from the time you find a home to you're getting the keys and walking in the door.
Yeah.
There's several issues that can come up, whether it be, encroachment from a neighbor. A lot of people see, they think, oh, I'm buying a brand new house. It may have just been built and everything's going to be hunky dory. We're going to be good to go with it. And, people make mistakes from time to time. So, I always encourage people to get a survey. We want to double check things that have already been done in the past. But yeah, weird things pop up all the time. We're constantly dealing with farmland that has now been divided up into houses, and that poses certain issues. We're dealing with couples that are going through divorce or separation, people buying a second home, a rental house. It really just depends. Every situation is different.
Yeah. I think
go
ahead.
I would love to break in with a quick story.
Oh God.
This is too good to pass up. I am sitting with a client. Of course, we won't say any names. And I happen to ask, why are you getting this HELOC, which is a home equity line of credit?
Yep.
And they're essentially using the equity they own.
Which sounds like a supervillain, by the way. What a weird acronym. Have you seen HELOC? Yeah, he's the one with the metal arm with the weird gun.
Oh my God, that's the HELOC!
That's perfect.
Home equity line of credit, yeah.
So I happen to ask, why are you getting this? And she stares me straight in the face and says, I'm going to get all new teeth. No lie.
I'm gonna get all new teeth.
And as the business owner, my job is to keep a straight face when she delivers that line.
So many people were just like, yeah, he works in Fuquay.
And people think my practice is boring. I get stuff like that every day. So
I was gonna say, I imagine a lot of people like a house is probably the biggest financial buy there, and that means stress goes up. So you're probably not dealing with people at their best when you have to deliver news like this is actually going to be a number that you can't comprehend more than you thought it was going to be. And I bet they don't always handle that graciously.
And in the grand scheme of things, as an attorney, there's a lot of people. There's probably 10 people that go into purchasing a house, whether it be your lender, your realtor. There's a bunch of third parties that go into it. It is a team, and things go smoothly when we work as a team. When people aren't working as a team, they seem to be a little bit rockier. But at the end of the day, as an attorney, we're usually the last step in the process. So if there's anything that's gone wrong throughout the process, we're kind of hearing about it, and we're getting blamed for it.
Either deal with like a loaded gun or like somebody in a good mood.
Exactly.
Depending on how the process went.
Our goal is, when you leave our office with keys, you're happy, you're moving into your house, you're ready to go paint some walls, move your furniture in. But a lot of times we're heading to smooth things over. But in the end of the day, we're usually trying to make people happy that they're buying a house.
And you mentioned earlier, like the way that Fuquay is growing, or one of us mentioned it. And I saw that you are on you're chairman on the Young Professionals Board in Fuquay Varina.
Yeah. So I'm on the Chamber Board of Directors, and I'm the chair of the Chamber's Young Professionals Committee. And so one of the things I knew that when we moved into Fuquay, David's family is there. I think David's 3 or 4 generations living in the area. And so I grew up in Eastern North Carolina. So I was at a disadvantage. So I was like, I'm going to get involved. I'm getting involved in the chamber, doing stuff like that, getting my name out there.
Yeah.
And we have a huge young professionals population. We have a lot of larger businesses. The Bob Barker Company, for instance, John Deere has an area.
So I've heard of that. The Bob Barker Company.
They make prison supplies. So your non-flammable mattresses, things like that. But
it's not the guy with the skinny microphone that got in a fist fight with Adam Sandler.
I have a question about business.
I've never been, so I don't know if I'm the best person, but I'll try.
I like that that's the first time that you came in with like a serious question. Finally somebody said prisons.
I heard this thing. It says that the number of prison beds that are needed in 20 years is the current reading statistics of third graders. Is there any truth to that?
I don't know.
Have you heard of that?
I have not heard that, but I mean, it's probably, I do know I'm also on the board for a charter school that's opening up in the area. And one of the things that, the studies that I've read for that is third grade is usually the point where we can tell a lot about people when they read. If you're reading on a reading level that's supposed to be at the third grade, you tend to be more successful, whether or not you go to college or not. You tend to be more self-sufficient, and people that are struggling at the third or fourth grade level have a greater opportunity to fall off the path. And so there's probably some truth to that. I've never seen that, but
interesting. All right.
So I've never had the opportunity to tell this prison story, but it seems like a good time.
Disclaimer: David's never been to prison.
I've never been to prison though. So in law school, we were able to tour.
I've heard that the worst part is the Dementors. Sorry.
So we toured the Central Prison where they have death row, all that. So
is this in North Carolina?
It's in Raleigh. It's in downtown Raleigh on Western Boulevard. So we went there. It wasn't a far drive, and I asked one of the guards. I was like, "Man, you must have seen some stuff. Would you be willing to tell me what's the craziest thing you've seen?" And I really didn't know what to expect, if it was going to be some crazy violence. He was like, "Yeah, that's an easy one for me." And he told me this story. He said one time they needed somebody on the psych ward because they were down a man. So I volunteered. I needed the money. So they have this system, it's probably supplied by Bob Barker, where if you are on good behavior, so with so many days in a row, you can have a prize. Well, one of the biggest prizes
that at my daughter's elementary school.
It takes months and months to earn is a clear cassette player. I'm
a straight up 80s, but see-through, so that you can't smuggle stuff in it.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So this guy must have been good for months and months with no incidents. And he got this on the day this guy volunteers. So he's working and he watches this guy go to the stand. He gets this cassette player. I don't even know if I'm using the right word. It's been so long since I've seen one. He goes in to his cell and stares at this guard in the eyes, does not break eye contact, as he breaks down this cassette player and eats in each individual piece.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my.
There's no end to that. I don't know what that was about, but that I might have quit that day.
What a long-term play on that guy's behalf too. The months of planning, and he's finally.
He was ready.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder if he was happy that it was a different guy.
Well, I like to think he was just really bored and wanted to see if he could poop it all out and put it back together.
That's
long prison
boredom.
sentence. Yeah. So when I was in law school, I also worked for a federal magistrate judge and got to tour. So I've toured Central Prison, but also was able to tour Butner, which is a federal prison in Butner, North Carolina.
What an unfortunate prison name.
I know, it really is. But it's the only thing in Butner, North Carolina is the prison. Bernie Madoff is there.
Is he there?
I think he's still there. Mm-hmm. I think Martha Stewart may have been there. She was somewhere.
Prison for the
What
stars.
makes Butner a celebrity prison?
Well, so Butner is interesting
Yeah.
in the sense that they have high security or medium security, I think is what they call it, but they also have low security where it's low jack, I think it's on your ankle, but there's no prison walls necessarily. But just the difference between federal and state prisons night and day. It's just really interesting. But one of the craziest things that I learned when I was there is whenever they feed their inmates, the prisoners are making the food, they're required to freeze a tray every meal period to keep in case somebody gets sick. And they keep it for 6 months. They can go back and test it and see who was working that day and do.
Oh, okay. So they can get to the bottom of where the sickness came from.
It's a very controlled environment. It's very expensive to imprison somebody, and that's one of the reasons that you have so many people right now looking at prison reform, criminal justice reform. Is it costs a lot of money to imprison somebody, so it's a very controlled environment. You have stuff like David's story too that you're dealing with that on a daily basis as well.
Right.
What got you excited about being a community-based law firm? What's the benefit of being community-based as opposed to what I think a lot of people might assume is I need to hire one of the big boys, or I need to jump in and get some big firm to come in and work with us. What's the benefit of working with a community-based law firm versus?
And I think by community-based, you mean, and this is something I wanted to highlight as well, is that these guys are out in the community, unlike anybody I know. I mean, you guys are great at that. when I think of you. So
Yeah.
it's like, that's
Yeah,
what
I
we're
did
talking
mean
about,
that.
right?
Yeah. Every law firm happens to be in a community.
So are you asking that from the perspective of why do we enjoy it, or why is it beneficial to the client?
I'd like to know both, but I was asking from like, what's the benefit from a client standpoint to be like, why should I work with the local team?
I would start out by saying we try and we didn't learn it from anybody else. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel, but we wanted to invent an approach that would make sense to the client, whether it be the flat fees that we charge rather than by the hour whenever we can. And that's majority of what we do. Whether it's how we break things down. So all the time I'll have a business client come in just to get a quote, and he'll tell me the quote from the other guy, and he won't have any idea what that includes. So I feel like I've gone out of my way.
Rate.
Yeah. And it's like, for this price, this is what you get. And if you add all these things together, here's what you get. And just to be able to, I guess, one, be very transparent, and two, build a relationship with our clients that I feel like so many other attorneys don't. And we chose practice areas that we would love to grab a beer. We would love to grab a coffee with our clients. And you just wouldn't say that if you were a criminal attorney or family law attorney most of the time.
One of the great things is no matter who we're dealing with, whether it be real estate or business law, most of the people that we're dealing with are business owners. We're dealing with realtors that are involved in the community. They're business owners. David's clients are business owners. Even some of our estate planning, a lot of times we're doing estate plans for business owners. And so, they're very involved in the community. But Fuquay, Southern Wake County, and even getting into Harnett and Johnston counties is such a growing place for businesses. It's a great area to start a business. There's a need for businesses to go there. There are people moving into town in these areas. So it's really afforded us an opportunity to connect with people.
Yeah.
And then also, we can make those interconnections. So if David has a client and I have a client that we think that they should meet together, we can make that introduction, and it really helps for a network for us, but also to expand the network of people that we work with.
Mm-hmm. And I say this all the time. We're so lucky because other attorneys are doing just as hard of work, and they are helping people on maybe the worst day of their lives. A lot of the times we're with them on the best day. Mm-hmm. So they're starting a business, they're buying a house, or they're planning for their future, right? It's generally happy things, and we get to share that with them.
Sure.
And I really enjoy that. And there's so many practice areas where that's not true. If you're suing someone, if you're getting a divorce, if you're, fighting a charge, that's definitely not the case.
You'd often be seeing them on their worst day.
That's right.
When you were talking, it made me think, like, I grew up in a small town. As a kid, you think about it in a different lens. Like, I thought, like, I can't get away with anything because this person knows this person, and I know everybody that lives down my mile stretch of road, and I can't get within 15 miles. Like, everybody knows my parents, It's like, and that's just how you run it through that filter as a kid. But I think you get older, and when we moved here and when we moved from bigger cities to smaller cities, you think, like, there's a real benefit to community. Like, the idea that together, if you can help a city get better, then the rising tide floats all the ships. Like, it's great for everybody. And there's that whole community approach. And I think now, as I get older, I really want to do business with the business that's closer to me. And I want to know the person I'm doing business with. And I wonder if there's like a resurgence in that, or if that's just a Joe thing. But I hope there is, like, that people want to get to know each other better and have a bigger sense of community. And I think the way that I hear people talk about Fuquay Varina, I think that's a big part of what your guys' city is. Nobody from Fuquay likes to diss Fuquay other than its name and to be funny. Except for maybe the Fuquay memes lady. Had she ever come out and say who she is?
Oh, I've met her before.
Is she funny? She has to be funny.
Fun fact about me. I'm in charge of the Fuquay Christmas Parade. And for coming on my third year, and we had the Fuquay Varina memes had an entry in the Christmas parade. I got to meet her. So I was able to meet.
Oh, I thought you meant she roasted the Fuquay parade.
No. She was in there. And so she'll be in there again this year. And so I've met her, sworn to secrecy. Cannot disclose who she is.
Man, if you're a fan of memes, like, if you find them funny, it's a really funny account.
Great.
And if you haven't heard of it, you have no idea what we're talking about. There's a city, Fuquay Varina, and it has a reputation of being like a a salt of the earth type of community.
The redheaded stepchild.
The redheaded stepchild. And then they'll compare that to cities like Cary or Durham or Raleigh or something. Like Cary's known as like Cary, like it's a little bit fancier. And so they'll take really funny memes and just make a joke about the difference between the two cities. And like, they're funny. Have you followed it? Have you seen it?
I haven't seen one.
Like
of them yet.
she's not just like a one-hit wonder.
No,
Like the
she's
majority of the memes are funny, and so she's got to be a legitimately
Yeah.
funny person.
Yeah, she's hilarious. There's always something going on in town, and you know the way that most people find it out is through Fuquay memes. There's a meme about it before anywhere else. And
She's more influential than the paper.
Yeah.
She's got like,
Where is that? Like on Instagram or
Instagram, Facebook. She's on all of them. I think she has a blog post.
man,
that
if she
writes.
listens to this, if you would like to come on the Guys Who Do Stuff, we'll like mask your voice.
We'll
We'll
take
like,
your
rah, rah,
picture.
rah.
Yeah, photos.
I'll see if I can connect you. We're all about connecting people.
Yeah,
Maybe we
we-
can make that happen.
That'd be fascinating. The power that she holds, because you know I have gotten news about Fuquay from the memes page, just like you said. Just how it worked. I saw it on Facebook, or somebody said, "Did you see this?" Like it's usually people who are in Fuquay that find them much funnier than most.
It varies. It can be about traffic. I think there was one a few weeks ago where some neighborhood, the pool, somebody had pooped in a pool and it became a meme. A lot of times it's about traffic, but you know, it varies from time to time.
Yeah.
So.
Do you guys have, like, I know getting to Fuquay, there's a real traffic problem. Is there a real traffic problem in Fuquay?
I think so. You know, I've through my role in the chamber, I've met with some of our town officials and stuff just to hear what's going on. And, you know, part of Fuquay is that it grew so quickly.
Yeah, rate of growth, I'm sure, affects that.
And there was no way that they could really plan for that growth. And so now Fuquay is doing some things where they're able to kind of redo some roads, maybe widen some roads, and try to catch up with the growth as it keeps going. But, you know, it's one of those things, and Fuquay has taken a really interesting approach when they deal with like DOT and things like that, and trying to expedite how fast the roads are improving.
Yeah.
But most people don't realize it's not a town of Fuquay issue. It's a state of North Carolina issue. It's a state level entity.
So how long have you guys known each other? Like since kids?
No.
No, I think we met my sophomore year of law, or my second year of law school.
Yeah.
And
So I was 1 year ahead, but then I did a dual degree. And when I came back for my second year, Nolan was in his second year.
Okay.
So we did year 2 and 3, and then did the bar all at the same time.
Yeah.
it was totally the beards.
It was the
We
beards
just
that drew
bonded.
together.
We just bonded. Both had beards.
Yep.
Yeah. So how was the bar?
Oh, it's terrible.
Taking the bar. Was it as bad as the hype? Is it?
I'll say it was. I think preparing for the bar, studying for the bar, was significantly worse than actually taking the bar. But I think it has to be that way. In hindsight, I remember saying, "Oh, the bar wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be." But also remember leaving. I was at McKimmon Center in Raleigh. Took the bar there. I remember leaving, and I don't remember driving home. And I think I sat on my couch for like 2 hours without the TV on or anything, just
I don't think
processing.
there's not a lot of people that have to, or professions that have to encounter that level of stress. If you think about it, like I've invested a lot of money, a lot of my life into this profession and what I want to do. And if they tell me if I don't pass this test, I can't do it.
So to me, the differentiator, because a lot of people take hard tests, I think the studying of it was like running a 5K versus running a marathon. Like most people today, if their life depended on it, you could do a 5K.
Yeah.
Right. But you could not do a marathon.
It might not be pretty. Yeah.
Right. It might not be pretty.
But yeah, like a marathon, it doesn't matter how hard you try. Like
Right,
try,
exactly.
sure. It's
Exactly.
like run to Fuquay
To me-
from here where we are.
To me, that was the difference, because in college, I was the type of person who probably didn't study well enough in advance. So I would pull the all-nighters.
Yeah.
Right. And it'd be fine.
So the tactics that you had used to be successful in test making were last minute cramming and you couldn't
Right.
apply them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the best analogy I can come up with, is it's like the difference between a 5K and a marathon.
Yeah.
Like you could easily burn out and just crash.
But you're spending about 3 months prior to that test, just
Prepping.
from wake to going to sleep, studying, cramming.
Wow.
And I think that to me was way more difficult than actually taking the test.
Definitely.
I think had I not gone through that, the test would have been more difficult, but I was prepared.
All right, so
Right.
big philosophical question then. Like if you spent the majority of your life cramming before a test and then you had to learn how to study differently. And so probably like, here's my metaphor that I would like to use for this. I find it very interesting that now, like the way we read is we read for volume. If you want to be like cool and be a guy who reads, you read 100 books and people are like, oh, you're a reader. Whereas if you rewind like a couple thousand years, people didn't have libraries and a bunch of books, and their form of reading, or somebody that was learned, was like, I've really studied this one book. And so the question that I have for you guys is a question about retention. I know I crammed for tests the way that you defined for a lot of my tests. I remember virtually nothing 3 minutes after the test. Do you feel like the way that the bar made you prepare and having to really live in that for that amount of time has led you to retain more information?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say Josh is giving me this look like that's never been cool. Reading 100 books has never been cool.
Yeah,
I don't know where you
I may have overstated
So
people's perception of coolness. You know, like that people, they always look up to people that read a lot, you know, like they're esteemed, like the rock stars of our culture. Like, oh, you've read books.
Yeah, Josh is like, I don't know about that.
I may have overstated.
riding my damn book.
Exactly. I don't know. I think I didn't change my study method for the bar that much. I'm very much I have to see an outline. I have to be able to see the big picture. What are we studying in general? And then I can learn the individual things, which is how the bar was. I would cram, but I could cram based on something I had already studied. Yeah. I was never somebody that could pick it up the day before. So David may be able to answer better.
I don't know. That's a tough question. I don't think I can answer it, but I will say this. I don't know. An easy example for me is the Bible. At one point in time, I think like I would feel like, well, I haven't really read unless I've read like X amount of chapters, right, in a day. I've completely changed that philosophy where I would much rather read 2 verses and think about them over and over and see what depth I can get to, rather than, well, if I haven't read 3 chapters, then like, what's the point?
Yeah.
I get so much more out of that. And when I realized that, it was a game changer. So I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but I think I would go for depth rather than volume.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's about comprehension, right? Like how you get it inside of you so that it actually, you can apply something that you learned. And I think that's, you know, like the rock star readers that I was mentioning earlier that read books all the time. Josh's. I wonder if they're missing that component. You know?
Yeah. Well, one of the things about the bar is, you're studying 10, 15 topics, and, you know, like I had never touched family law prior to the bar, never took a family law class, had no interest in doing family law, had done one family law case my entire practice, never plan on doing one again. And so in that sense, you know, the retention didn't really matter. I needed to know it for that 2-day test.
Yeah.
But then like real estate, you know, I guess I retained more of it because I practice it. And I've always felt that when I was in law school, you know, I didn't necessarily have the top grades in law school because I knew I didn't need them to get what I wanted to do. But for me, an internship was much more valuable, actual practical knowledge, going out there and applying something, because that's just how I retain things.
The idea that our version of truth is cultural. So us in the US, I think we're 100% geared towards the volume. We want to know like a bunch of facts. But me having tried to learn as much and understand as much of the culture of Zambia as I can, their facts are narratives, right? So they don't care how many facts you can say, but if you're talking to the headman, and I learned this early on, he's going to give you a truth and a story.
Yeah.
So to me, because of our cultural understanding of truth, more people want to read this big long, and out of this, I'll get 20 facts.
Yeah.
Whereas if the headman of the village that we work in were reading it, he would want to come away with one profound story. So I don't know. The more and more I learn about that, the more I think we need to be better balanced in. We're so geared towards facts. Let's learn more conceptual stories that can have a deeper meaning, even like multiple meanings.
Yeah.
That's
a good point. Like, why do we value so much facts in the US when, like, honestly, we can Google anything?
Exactly.
And all the facts, if you trust Wikipedia, which I do implicitly because anybody can edit it. And so it has to be legit. But
It's on the internet.
It's on the
true,
internet.
yeah.
It has to be true. Just like what you're listening to now. Take it for exactly what it is.
Well, it's cultural because one day they'll look back and say that was a stupid way to do it. Kind of like with things in the past, like the Ford conveyor belts or some sort of things with Thomas Edison. People look back and that was a stupid way to do it, and then you figure out about this. Yeah, I heard that Donald Miller has a great podcast going right now, and it talks about how in the future, even in our lifetime, employers are going to value the ability for a candidate to focus. Because we're so distracted with so much knowledge.
Yeah.
Just focus.
I believe that. I think I've heard it said before, and I don't remember who said it, but they were very smart. But truth is interpreted through relationships. So like when we're talking about cultural norms, what we know as truth is because of the people that we have surrounded ourselves with, and we collectively agree based on our experiences what we think truth is.
When I realized the cultural implications of truth, I feel like it shook me.
That's one of the things I feel like doing what areas of law that we do. You look at people, I listen to some podcasts, and I heard one with Elon Musk, for instance, and he's really throwing out everything about what we think about space, science, just all of it, and saying, let's reinvent it. He's sending rockets to space that are being reused, and he's building tunnels through LA and all this stuff. Yeah. And I think about it in the sense of what our practice areas, and that's something that does bother me a little bit, is to say, is there an opportunity, whether it be in real estate law, business law, to make a profound impact? Can we disrupt the system and change it? Yeah. And, eventually there may be. Right now, I don't necessarily know what that is. But I feel like, in certain areas of law, whether it be criminal justice, you can make a big impact, and you can, go to the Supreme Court and change a law. But I would be interested to see in our practice areas, business law, probably more so than anything else, is how can we throw out the system, the social construct of it, and invent something better?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love I think it was Simon
Sinek?
Simon Sinek. Yeah. Not
British,
Simon Cowell.
The British guy with the tight black V-necks.
He was talking about how, for lack of a better word, enlightened he feel like he was when he went and studied the culture of Japan, because it's one of the only cultures on the planet that isn't very westernized. Yeah. I feel like that's completely true for me. Once you go to a place that has a very different culture, and Josh, you can speak to this about the Philippines, I'm sure. Yeah. You realize, oh yeah, we kind of do that for no reason. Yeah. And it's almost like being able to look behind the curtain. Sure. So once you realize the more and more stuff in life where you can look behind the curtain, I think you get to what Nolan is talking about, where some of these things are so culturally ingrained that we're just doing it because everyone else is doing it and we had no idea.
Yeah. I have a daughter that's starting high school, and I think an apt analogy for what you're saying is like, I try to help her understand, like, there's a coolness that you care about in high school, that the instant, like 3 seconds after they hand you the diploma, becomes completely meaningless and doesn't affect the rest of your life. Right. But those last 4 years, like, for some reason, you were crippled and paralyzed by the fact that Susie B might think that you sat at the wrong lunch table and had wrong implications about your thoughts about the social structure of the group, blah, 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 which totally just evaporates and goes away. And I experienced a similar thing as a young person. I went on a mission trip to a third world country, and that feeling of coming back almost is like the same feeling after high school. You're like, why are we doing so much of what we're doing, and why did I value it so highly? You get to interact with it. So I got to go to Guatemala. I got to interact with a culture that seemed to have a higher level of joy and contentment with their life, and yet weren't pursuing the American dream in any way, shape, or form, but seemed to have a lot higher commitment or contentment level and joy.
It's like that in the Philippines. There's no
commitment.
depression. It just does no psychiatric treatment for depression. It just doesn't exist because of all the community. I mean, a lot of people are poor there, and they're happier. They're more connected to other human beings, and we're so lonely here and disconnected. It's a sad and obvious sort of difference. And,
well, it's kind of a catch-22 in the sense that, technology has made us by far more connected. They used to always say like, oh, millennials, they're always on their phone. They don't know how to have a conversation. And
they said that about every generation. TV's going to rot these people. Radio's going to rot these people.
But it's actually making you more connected with people. You can connect with people in the Philippines, from America. You can do whatever. But then, it does, it makes us more connected. But then I feel like a lot of Americans, we see that some new calls for depression or new calls for drama and animosity. So it's just really, as these trends go, a lot of it is still, a social construct of what everybody else is doing.
That is an exciting thing about your guys' profession, because you can think even in American history of when law did what you're describing. It was like, I know we've always thought this, guys, but turns out like we should change this because it's not true. Like civil rights, for example, like just because we were doing something a certain way and everybody thought that was cool for 100 years doesn't mean that's what we should be doing.
Right.
And that's the role of the legal system, is to say like, well, let's run it through the paces and see if it still holds up today and see if we still think this is what's best for our country. And
not to get into this rabbit hole at all, but I'll just mention.
Let's spend the next 20 minutes talking about whatever this is.
Let's go down
it's
the rabbit
cool
hole.
to me, and Nolan definitely knows more about this than me, but how the Constitution is like a living, breathing document.
Yeah.
And how at one point, it's always said like every man, but at one point in time, we didn't literally include every person as every man.
Or we included them as part of people.
Right, or part of people.
Some of my favorite legal heroes are people that don't necessarily view it as a living, breathing document, but I do. I tend to, because we've changed it 27 times now, and we have court cases because things are changed. And one of the things is when the founders created the Constitution, it was the second document that we had. We had the Articles of Confederation, and then we had the Constitution, and the first one failed. And, we really had to redo this to say, hey, one, we can redo this, but two, no other country in the world has had a more successful document. And it really, nobody knew this was going to be successful. It could have failed. And, I don't know if it's testimony to the people here or that we added flexibility to it in the beginning, but most countries that go through what we went through as a country failed.
Yeah. I wonder if there was any truth to, because like having one that failed so fast and realizing that it failed, like isn't that always like the business thing? Like you want to fail fast.
Exactly.
Like USA did it. They're like, yeah, we did it. Here's the country, guys. We've put a lot of thought into it here. No? Okay.
Well, sometimes the opportunities that were there the first time, aren't the ones that you need to make it successful. And I think that's it happened to our country, but it's really good for businesses to say, when we first started, we didn't have all the resources and opportunities we needed to be where we are today. They come down the road, and, for our country, we didn't have the people in place that would agree to the current Constitution. You had to have those people in the right positions. It had to be kind of a fate type thing. And I think for businesses the same way. People get nervous that their business is going to fail. Sometimes they have to, and out of that you regrow to be something even better.
Yeah. Well, we certainly learn a lot more from failures than continual success.
Yeah. That reminds me of Gary Vee. He's like, I love failing. He's famous for saying that type of thing.
Yeah.
Failing forward.
Yeah. Failing forward.
No progression without regression. Somebody shared something with me yesterday about the push-up. The metaphor of the push-up is, how do you do a push-up? Anybody?
You push up.
Okay. What are the building blocks of a push-up? Ding, ding, ding,
you do a plank and then you move your arms down and then you move them back up.
I'm not familiar with push-ups.
Are you getting at?
All right, I know what you're looking for. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be sarcastic. So it comes in a circular tube and there's a thing on the bottom and you push up and the sherbet comes out the top.
Fred Flintstone version?
I'm familiar with those. I know what you're talking about.
So a push-up has a foundation, and it's on the foundation, it is a series of ups and downs, and how many you do determines your body change, the change of the body. So there's up and down on a foundation. Everybody together, up and down.
The metaphor is great. You're not going to get any resistance training or grow if you only move in one direction.
So guys, thanks for being here. Is there anything else coming up that you want to talk about, tell about, share about?
Oh man. Not too much. One of the things that we are sponsoring in our community, just to kind of give a shout out to our fellow community members, is Pints Ice Cream is having an anniversary coming up, or it'll be in the past once we probably get this published. But we're big supporters of them, and so we would encourage everybody to go check them out. They're 1 year old. And so we'll be sponsoring some stuff for their birthday party.
Yeah, what makes Pint special? Because it is special.
because it's got beer and ice cream. You can get boozy milkshakes.
And they mix it. And
so the good thing about Pints is, everything is fresh. They get their cream from a creamery in Julian, North Carolina. But all the ingredients that go into it are fresh. Lavender, some of the lavender they've used for their white chocolate lavender was literally grown in their yard to do that. And then they have a really good beer selection. You can get beer floats. You can do beer floats. Really good. Boozy milkshakes are some of my favorites.
What's a boozy milkshake?
So it is. So we have stuff they have stuff that's like a Irish car bomb milkshake. It's got liquor in it. It's got ice cream in it. It's got hot fudge in it. Can't beat it. Yeah. That and we'd love to see everybody come out to the Christmas parade. I got to give a shameless plug for my venture. But we would love to see everybody come out for that in December.
And we'd like to encourage the Fuquay Arena Memes woman to just really cover that like live
stream.
She'll be in it. She probably will. Yeah. And then maybe we can get her on here.
If you need Christmas trees, I can hook you up.
Yeah, I know the man. I know the man here.
I mean, let's talk.
Santa Claus.
But about the Pints thing, when is that date? Is there an anniversary date? An actual
August 17th.
August 17th. Mm-hmm. Okay, Saturday.
Well, in line of the shameless plugs, we got the Christmas trees. We got the Christmas parade. I will plug that fall and winter is around the corner. And people love coffee. And Chikandi Coffee is a great place to get it.
Yeah.
Not only is it single origin, top tier coffee, but it's also for an awesome cause.
Where can they get it?
They can get it at chikandicoffee.com.
Love it.
And I would love to encourage people to swing by our office, 920 Durham Street, and come try it. We always have some brewed. We'd love to meet people and let them try some Chikandi coffee. It goes back to David's nonprofit, Love Abounds. So it's a good cause.
And to hear more about the story, go back and check out David's previous episode.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do it.
Yeah. And do the stuff.
And do the
stuff.
So I have a question for you guys.
We actually don't take questions. We only ask.
Plot twist. The questionee has become the questioner.
Push up, down.
What kind of stuff have you guys done ever since the inception of this podcast? I know when I first was on here, you guys were talking about training in some fashion. What's that look like?
So thanks for the accountability checkup.
Absolutely. That's what I'm all about.
Dun.
Because, Joe, you want to start or I'll start?
Yeah, sure. I think like all push-up downs, we got really good into it, and I was able to do like 7-8 miles I was doing at a time, and it was doing good, and then got busy. And now I'm like, I need to get back on that. But we recently decided, like, in order to make sure that, and this is a good pro tip for people that want to do stuff, and I think it's just a good life lesson. We didn't book a marathon. Like, we should have put it on the calendar and paid money to sign up for one to do it, because like so many things in life, like when it comes to like doing things that are good ideas or adventures, like the first step is so important. And we were just talking about that a couple of weeks ago. Like, we just need to book one. We just need to do it. Yeah. And then that will help us provide the framework for finishing up the training session and get going on it.
So yeah, we just totally dropped the ball on it, to be honest. I mean, I moved, we bought a house. And so I've, just been life stuff and then running, and I'm just always riding my bicycle. So I did move next door to the American Tobacco Trail. So it's fun. And I'm up in my game again.
How'd that home buy go? Was it good?
The home buy went great. Nolan Perry handled our closing like a breeze. So home closing plus over here beside me. So yeah, that was good. I have been meditating more regularly, and that's been game changing.
I know we're out of time, but I love to ask, what does that look like for you? Because I know each person does it a little bit different. Sometimes I literally just stare at nature. Other times it can look different. What's that look like for you?
Nature.
That's awesome.
Backyard. Now I have a backyard. So that was how I found my groove. That's how Stella got his groove back, guys.
Wow.
Backyard chair.
So you could say that Morgan Perry Law played a crucial part in you meditating now in a better way.
You're welcome. Saved you a lot of money on therapy.
Visit MorganPerryLaw.com today.
And you can edit this out if I said this in the last one, but my favorite definition of focus is being extremely present exactly where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. The present. It's a gift. For the moment.
It's also a social construct.
And on that note, we thank you for listening to today's episode of Guys Who Do Stuff.
Yeah, thanks, guys. See you later.